The morning sun poured through the towering glass walls of Atlanta International Airport, painting the polished marble floors with golden streaks as Maya and Lila Carter, 17-year-old twin sisters, navigated the early bustle with a quiet confidence that belied their youth. Their matching navy backpacks bobbed lightly with each step, their casual outfits, crisp black jeans, white tees, and sleek white sneakers, blending seamlessly into the crowd, though their poised demeanor hinted at something more. Maya clutched their boarding passes, her fingers tracing the embossed words "First Class," a gift from their father, Daniel Carter, a telecom mogul whose name graced corporate towers across the country. These tickets weren't just for comfort. They were a symbol of trust, a milestone for their first solo trip to a prestigious STEM conference in San Francisco, where they'd been selected as delegates from thousands of applicants. Daniel's voice echoed in Maya's mind, his words from the night before steady and firm. "You're not just my daughters. You're forces of your own. Stay sharp, stay humble, and don't let anyone dim your light." Lila, the bolder twin, nudged Maya with a mischievous grin, her braids swaying as she whispered, "No bodyguards, no hovering dad, just us ready to take on the world." Maya smirked, her heart fluttering with a mix of exhilaration and nerves, her thumb brushing over the boarding passes for the third time that morning, ensuring every detail was perfect. The airport thrummed with life. Muted announcements crackled overhead, coffee machines hissed at distant kiosks, and travelers moved like schools of fish, darting around glowing signs with roller bags in tow. At the check-in kiosk for Horizon Air, a young agent named Tyler scanned their passes, his eyebrows lifting slightly at the first-class designation. "Fancy," he said with a tight smile, handing back the tags. Lila leaned in, her voice playful but edged with a knowing sharpness. "Our dad says comfort's an investment, not a flex." Tyler nodded, but his pause stretched a beat too long, his eyes flickering with a scrutiny that Maya caught but didn't voice. She felt it, a subtle weight, like the air itself was sizing them up, questioning their place in a space reserved for privilege. The sisters moved through security with practiced ease, their carry-ons gliding behind them, and found a quiet corner near Gate C-12 with an hour to spare. Lila, ever the adventurer, spotted a juice bar across the concourse and darted off, promising to return with something tropical, her laughter trailing behind her like a spark. Maya's gaze, meanwhile, landed on a bookstore, its shelves lined, with colorful spines calling to her like a siren. She wandered in, her fingers grazing the covers until she settled on The Power of Why, a book about questioning systems and sparking change. Fitting, she thought, for the conference ahead. 10 minutes later, they reunited near the gate, Lila balancing 2 pineapple smoothies and Maya clutching her new book. They sank into the gate's stiff plastic chairs, sipping their drinks and watching planes taxi under a peach-colored dawn, the sky glowing with promise. "This is it, Maya," Lila said, her voice bright with possibility. "We're free, headed to change the game at this conference, speaking on panels, meeting other teen innovators." Maya nodded, her mind already picturing their speech, the way they'd command the stage with data and dreams, but a small knot of unease tightened in her chest. Not from the trip itself, but from the way the world sometimes looked at them. 2 black girls who dared to occupy spaces others didn't expect. She'd felt it before, the sidelong glances, the extra questions, the assumption that they needed to prove their right to be there. Pushing the thought aside, she told herself today would be different. They'd board their flight, arrive in San Francisco, and prove they belonged, not just to the conference but to every room they entered. The gate area filled slowly, families with strollers, business travelers tapping on laptops, and a young man with a camera rig setting up what looked like a travel vlog. Maya and Lila exchanged a glance, their silent twin language kicking in. Lila's raised eyebrow saying, "He's probably live-streaming his breakfast," and Maya's half-smile replying, "Let him, we've got bigger things." They sipped their smoothies, the cold sweetness grounding them, and watched a Horizon airplane pull into the gate, its silver body glinting in the morning light. For a moment, everything felt right, their preparation, their purpose, the quiet thrill of independence. But beneath the surface, A tension lingered, one they couldn't quite name but could feel, like a storm gathering on a clear horizon. Little did they know, the world was already preparing to challenge their place, and this trip would become something far bigger than a conference, a moment that would ripple far beyond the tarmac. The jet bridge stretched before Maya and Lila, Carter like a tunnel to their future, the cool air inside a stark contrast to the warm Atlanta morning they'd left behind at Gate C-12. Their first-class boarding passes, already scanned, felt like a badge of trust from their father, Daniel, as they stepped onto the Horizon airplane, their carry-ons rolling smoothly behind them. The cabin smelled of fresh coffee and leather, and the sisters exchanged a quick glance, Lila's eyes sparkling with anticipation, Maya's steady but alert. They settled into seats 1A and 1B, stowing their bags with practiced ease, the plush seats a quiet reward for their hard-won selection as STEM conference delegates. A flight attendant, Emily Stone, approached, her smile tight and her blonde ponytail pulled back severely. "Good morning, ladies," she said, her tone clipped as her gaze flicked over their casual outfits. "Are you traveling alone?" Lila nodded, her voice bright but firm. "Yes, we're headed to a conference in San Francisco. Not our first flight solo." Emily's eyes narrowed slightly. "First class, I see. Unaccompanied minors." Maya, sensing the shift in tone, answered calmly, "We're 17, within FAA regulations for independent travel." Emily nodded slowly, her expression unreadable, then stepped away, murmuring something into her headset. The sisters exchanged another look, Maya's brow furrowing as she whispered, "That felt off." Lila shrugged, unwrapping a protein bar. "Some people just don't expect us up here." The cabin filled with the soft hum of boarding passengers, but the air around them grew heavy, as if the space itself was watching. Minutes later, Emily returned with a male crew member, Marcus Reed, whose name tag gleamed under the cabin lights. He held a clipboard, his posture rigid. "Ladies, we need to verify your boarding passes again," he said, his voice low but edged with authority. Lila's hand froze mid-bite. "We scanned them at the gate. Everything's valid." Marcus cleared his throat. "There's been a procedural issue. Could you step off the aircraft briefly to resolve it at the gate?" Maya's stomach tightened, her fingers gripping the armrest. "What issue?" she asked, keeping her voice even. Emily interjected, her smile thin. "It's just routine. Won't take long." The sisters glanced at each other, Lila's jaw clenching as she read the unspoken tension in Maya's eyes. They unbuckled their seatbelts, gathered their bags and followed Marcus down the jet bridge, the eyes of other passengers trailing them, some curious, some indifferent, a few whispering. The walk felt endless, each step amplifying the heat. Rising in Maya's chest, a mix of confusion and dread. At the gate, a manager named Karen Lynn waited, her navy blazer crisp and her expression carefully neutral. "Maya and Lila Carter," she asked, glancing at her tablet. "We need to confirm. Your travel details, IDs and any conference documentation, please." Lila handed over their passports and the STEM conference letter, her movements sharp. "We've flown before, everything's in order." Karen flipped through the documents with exaggerated care, her silence stretching. "There were concerns raised by the crew," she said finally, her voice measured. "Concerns about what?" Lila pressed, her tone cutting through the formality. Karen hesitated, her eyes flicking to Marcus. "The legitimacy of your booking. We're just being thorough." Maya felt a sting, the word legitimacy landing like an accusation. "Our father booked these tickets," she said, her voice steady but cold. "He's a verified Horizon Air member. The names match our IDs." Karen's smile faltered. "Please wait here while we consult our supervisor." The sisters sat in the gate's hard chairs, the hum of the terminal now a distant roar. Lila's hands balled into fists. "They think we don't belong," she whispered, her voice thick with anger. Maya stared at the floor, her mind racing. "Maybe it's a mistake," she said, but the words felt hollow. Across the gate, a young man with a camera, Jordan Hayes, the vlogger from earlier, watched them, his lens subtly angled their way. Maya noticed but said nothing, her focus on the growing realization that this wasn't about tickets or procedure. It was about them. Two black girls in a space where someone somewhere decided they didn't fit. The plane's engines roared as it pulled away without them, leaving a void where their journey should have been. The gate area felt like a stage under harsh lights, with Maya and Lila Carter stranded in the hard plastic seats, their carry-ons at their feet, and the sting of humiliation still raw. The Horizon airplane they should have been on was now a distant speck, its departure announced with a bland intercom chime that echoed through the terminal. Lila's fingers tapped restlessly on her phone, her eyes scanning the crowd as if daring someone to meet her gaze, while Maya sat still, her hands folded tightly, trying to anchor herself against the churn of anger and disbelief. Jordan Hayes, the vlogger they'd noticed earlier, was still filming from a discreet distance, his camera lens catching the glint of overhead lights. Maya leaned toward Lila, her voice low. "He's recording us." Lila's head snapped up, her expression hardening. Let him. Maybe someone needs to see this. Before they could say more, Lila's phone buzzed with a notification. A clip of their removal from the plane, posted by Jordan, was gaining traction online, captioned, "Teens escorted off first class for no reason." Hashtags like Carter Sisters and airline bias began to trend, comments flooding in from strangers. Some outraged, others skeptical. Maya's heart sank as she read one. Why were they even in first class? Rich kids playing victim. Lila's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond, instead dialing their father, Daniel Carter. His voice came through after one ring, calm but razor-sharp. "Where are you? What happened?" Maya explained, her words measured despite the tremor in her chest, detailing Emily Stone's questions, Marcus Reed's clipboard, and Karen Lynn's vague concerns. Lila cut in, her voice thick. "They said our booking wasn't legitimate, Dad. They pulled us off like we were sneaking in." Daniel's silence was heavy, the kind that carried years of navigating a world that often questioned his place too. "Stay put," he said finally. "Don't talk to anyone else. I'm handling this." He hung up, and the sisters sat in the terminal's chaos, the world moving on around them. Families laughing, business travelers typing, a child spilling juice nearby. Lila opened her phone again, the video now at 10,000 views, with comments piling up. "This is 2025 and we're still profiling black kids? And airlines always overreact with unaccompanied minors." Maya felt exposed, like their private pain was becoming a public spectacle. A woman in her 50s, dressed in a sharp blazer, approached them, her eyes soft with empathy. "I saw..." "What happened?" she said quietly. "My daughter's your age. I'd be furious if this happened to her. You didn't deserve that." Lila nodded, her throat tight. "Thank you." The woman's husband gave a silent nod of support before they walked away, leaving the sisters with a flicker of warmth amidst the cold. Lila's phone buzzed again. Another post, this one from a passenger in coach who'd seen them escorted. Off, calling it unjust. The internet was moving faster than their thoughts, turning their story into a firestorm. Maya whispered, "This is getting big." Lila's eyes were glassy, but her voice was firm. "Good. Let it." 20 minutes later, Daniel called back, his tone clipped. "I spoke to Richard Vance, Horizon's CEO. He's an old contact. He's launching an internal review, but I made it clear that's not enough. Carter Tech runs their in-flight connectivity in 10 major hubs. I told him we'll pull priority access by tonight unless they issue a public apology and act on this." Maya's breath caught. "That's millions in losses." Daniel's voice softened. "You're worth more than their contracts. Nobody disrespects my daughters." Lila's hands trembled as she gripped the phone. "Dad, we just wanted to get to the conference." His reply was gentle but unyielding. "I know, but they made this bigger than a flight." The call ended, and the sisters sat in silence, the weight of his words settling over them. Across the terminal, a group of passengers glanced their way, some whispering, others scrolling on their phones, likely reading about the Carter sisters. Jordan approached, cautiously, his camera lowered. "I'm sorry for filming without asking," he said, "but I couldn't stay quiet. If you want to say something, I'm live right now." Lila shook her head, her voice steady. Not yet, this isn't about a viral moment. He nodded, stepping back respectfully. The terminal's rhythm continued, announcements rolling. Suitcases, the clink of coffee cups. But for Maya and Lila, time felt frozen, their world reduced to the ache of being seen as less. A new notification lit up Lila's phone. A news outlet had picked up the story, headlining it, "Teen Sisters Removed from First Class Amid Bias Allegations." Comments ranged from "disgusting behavior from Horizon Air" to "there. Just kids, why make a fuss?" Maya felt her chest tighten, the mix of support and vitriol overwhelming. Lila muttered, "Why is the internet faster than fairness?" Maya had no answer, only the growing sense that their story was no longer just theirs. A gate agent's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing rebooking options for their flight. But the words felt distant, irrelevant. The sisters weren't just passengers anymore. They were a headline, a debate, a mirror held up to a system that had tried to erase them. The terminal's hum faded into a dull roar as Maya and Lila Carter sat in the first-class lounge, a sleek oasis of marble counters and plush chairs that Horizon Air had ushered them into after their flight's departure, an attempt to soften the sting of their removal. The sisters perched on a corner sofa, their smoothies untouched, the bitter taste of injustice lingering instead. Daniel Carter's call had left them reeling. His threat to sever Carter Tech's infrastructure support for Horizon Air was a seismic move, one that could cripple the airline's operations across major hubs. Maya's mind churned with the weight of it, her fingers tracing the edge of her book, now a forgotten prop. Lila, usually quick with a quip, stared at the lounges. Glass wall, her silence louder than any words. A lounge attendant offered them sparkling water, but Maya waved it away, her voice polite but firm. "We're fine, thank you." The attendant retreated, and Lila muttered, "They think a free drink fixes this." Outside, planes taxied under, the midday sun oblivious to the storm brewing inside. Daniel called again, his voice a steady anchor. "Richard Vance is holding an emergency board meeting. He's shaken, but I told him apologies aren't enough. There needs to be accountability, starting with the crew." Maya's throat tightened. "What about the people who don't have a dad like you?" Daniel paused, his tone softening. "That's why I'm pushing, Maya. For you, for them, for every kid who gets looked at like they don't belong." Lila leaned into the phone, her voice low. "We don't want to hurt regular employees, Dad." He replied, "This isn't about them. It's about a system that let this happen. Stay strong, I'll update you soon." The call ended and the sisters sat, the lounge's luxury feeling like a cage. Across the room, a man in a suit, Julian Cole, station manager, approached. His smile practiced. "Miss Carters, I'm deeply sorry for the inconvenience. We're offering you seats on the next flight, first class, with full lounge access and meal vouchers." Lila's eyes narrowed. "Inconvenience? You mean being profiled?" Julian's smile wavered. "It was a miscommunication. We're investigating." Maya leaned forward, her voice cool. "You're investigating why we were pulled off a plane we paid to be on?" Julian extended 2 sleek tickets. "We'll make this right." Lila pushed them back. "We'll think about it." He retreated, muttering into his headset. The sisters moved to a quieter booth, needing space from the curious glances of other lounge guests. Lila opened her phone, the Carter sisters hashtag now trending globally, with Jordan's video nearing 1 million views. A new post caught her eye. A passenger from their flight, Rachel Kim, wrote, "I was in 2C, those girls were polite, quiet. The crew seemed agitated from the start. This wasn't procedure, it was bias." Comments exploded. "Horizon Air needs to answer for this," and "Another day, another black kid targeted." Maya exhaled, the validation bittersweet. "People are seeing it, Lila." Her sister nodded, but her voice was heavy. "They see it now, but what about tomorrow?" The lounge's calm was shattered when they overheard a familiar voice. Marcus Reed, the crew member who'd escorted them off, talking to a colleague near the coffee bar. If they weren't Carter's daughters, this would have blown over. "Just kids causing a fuss." Lila stood, her movements sharp, and strode toward him. "Say that again, Marcus." He froze, his colleague tugging at his sleeve. "This isn't the place." Marcus muttered, but Lila's voice was steel. "You said we're just kids making trouble. Say it to our faces." Lounge guests turned, the air thick with tension. Maya joined her, her tone quiet but piercing. "You decided we didn't belong before we even sat down." Marcus's face reddened, and he slipped through a staff door, his colleague trailing behind. Lila exhaled, her hands shaking as they returned to their booth. "Cowards," she whispered. Maya nodded, the confrontation draining yet empowering. Their phones buzzed with another update. Horizon Air's CEO had issued a statement, vague and corporate, promising a review of the incident but offering no apology. Lila tossed her phone onto the table. "They're covering their tracks, not fixing anything." Maya's eyes drifted to the tarmac, where another Horizon plane gleamed. "Dad's not letting them off that easy." An hour later, Daniel called, again his voice taut with progress. "Vance agreed to suspend Emily Stone and Marcus Reed pending investigation. They're drafting a public apology, but I'm not stopping there. Carter Tech's holding firm until they commit to policy changes and external audits." Lila's eyes widened. "You're really doing this?" Daniel's tone was resolute. "They crossed a line. This isn't just about you, it's about every passenger they've ever sidelined." Maya felt a crack in her chest, not pain but pride mixed with the weight of being at the center of something so vast. "What do we do now?" she asked. Daniel's voice softened. "You stay true to who you are, the world's watching now." The call ended, and the sisters sat, the lounge's soft jazz, a stark contrast to the fire in their veins. A woman, in her 30s, a business traveler, approached cautiously. "I was on your flight," she said. "I didn't speak up then, and I'm sorry. I filed a complaint with Horizon. What they did was wrong." Lila's voice was soft but firm. "Thank you for saying something now." The woman nodded and left, her words a small balm. Social. Media continued to churn, with posts from civil rights advocates and travel bloggers amplifying their story. Hey lawyer, Elena Ruiz tweeted, "The Carter sisters' case is textbook bias, subtle, procedural, devastating. Airlines must do better." Maya looked at Lila, her voice steady. "This isn't just our fight anymore." Lila nodded, her eyes fierce. "Then let's make sure it counts." The lounge felt less like a refuge now, more like a crossroads where their next move would shape not just their story, but countless others. The first-class lounge, with its polished surfaces and hushed jazz, became a temporary refuge for Maya and Lila Carter, but the weight of their situation pressed against them like the glass walls encircling the space. The confrontation with Marcus Reed and the news of their father's escalating battle with Horizon Air had left them both energized and exhausted, their emotions a tangled dance of defiance and vulnerability. Lila's phone buzzed relentlessly, each notification a reminder that their story was no longer private. Carter Sisters was now a global conversation, with Jordan's video surpassing 2 million views and news outlets from local blogs to national networks clamoring for their voice. Maya sat with her arms crossed, her eyes fixed on a distant plane, trying to process the shift from conference delegates to symbols of a larger fight. Lila, scrolling through comments, paused on one from a teen their age. "You're speaking for all of us who get side-eyed in places we belong." It hit hard, a spark of purpose amidst the chaos. Maya broke the silence, her voice soft but resolute. "We can't just sit here, Lila. People are listening now." Lila nodded, her fingers hovering over her phone. "But what do we say? If we talk, they'll twist it. If we don't, they'll fill the gaps themselves." The sisters decided to call Sarah Wells, their former speech coach turned PR consultant, whose number was a lifeline in their contacts. Sarah answered immediately, her voice warm but direct. "I saw the footage. You're handling this with more grace than most adults could. What do you need?" Maya explained their hesitation, wanting to speak but fearing misrepresentation. Sarah's advice was clear. Speak from your truth, not their script. Write your own statement first, something you control. Inspired, the sisters requested a quiet corner of the lounge, where a staff member set up a small table with notepads. They drafted a statement for the Public Accountability Project, a watchdog group that had reached out, carefully choosing words. That named the bias without fueling anger. We were removed from our flight not because of policy, but because our presence in first class was questioned, Maya wrote, her pen steady. Lila added, "We want airlines to examine how assumptions shape their actions so no one else feels erased." The process was cathartic, each sentence a reclaiming of their narrative. As they finalized the draft, a journalist, Mia Torres from the Daily Pulse, approached, her badge gleaming but her demeanor respectful. "I know you're overwhelmed," she said, "but if you're ready, I'd like to give you space to share your story, unedited." Lila glanced at Maya, who nodded slightly. They agreed to a brief interview, sitting across from Mia in the lounge's quiet nook. Maya spoke first, her voice measured. "We followed every rule, had every document, but we were still pulled off because we didn't fit someone's idea of first-class passengers." Lila's tone was sharper but controlled. "This isn't just about us. It's about every person who's been made to feel they don't belong." Mia's questions were gentle but probing, drawing out their experience without sensationalizing it. The interview, uploaded within hours, went viral, their words resonating across platforms. Passengers from their flight began posting corroborating accounts. "I was in 3A. The crew was whispering about them from the start," one wrote. Another, a college student, added, "They were calmer than I would have been. Horizon owes them more than an apology." The sisters watched the response unfold, their statement to the watchdog group gaining traction alongside Mia's article. A civil rights advocate, Dr. Lena Harper, shared their words, writing, "The Carter sisters have exposed how bias hides in procedure. This is a call to action." The lounge, once a sterile escape, now felt like a war room, with the sisters at the center of a growing movement. A new development broke. Horizon Air announced the suspension of Emily Stone and Marcus Reed, citing policy violations, and promised a revised, unaccompanied minor protocol. Lila read the press release, aloud, her voice skeptical. "Sounds like damage control." Maya nodded, her mind on their father's earlier words about systemic change. "It's a start, but it's not enough." A lounge guest, an older man reading a tablet, leaned over. "I saw your interview. You handled it with dignity. I fly Horizon weekly, and I've never seen anything like this addressed so fast." His words were kind, but they underscored the rarity of their situation. Daniel Carter's influence had forced a response most wouldn't get. Lila's phone lit up with an email from the STEM conference organizers offering to reschedule their panel and send a car to a hotel. The sisters declined the hotel, choosing to stay in the lounge where they could think and plan. Sarah called back, praising their statement. "You've set the tone. Now the world's waiting for what's next. Don't let them define you." Maya felt a shift, a clarity that this moment was theirs to shape. Lila, reading another passenger's post, whispered, "They're not just supporting us, they're demanding change." The sisters exchanged a look, their bond a silent vow to keep pushing. As the lounge clock ticked toward evening, a young woman approached, her voice hesitant. "I was in coach on your flight. I didn't say anything then, but I should have. I told Horizon's customer service what I saw." Maya smiled, her heart lifting. "That means everything." The woman's words joined a chorus of voices. Strangers, advocates, passengers, building a wave that felt unstoppable. The sisters sat back, their draft statement sent, their interview live, and their resolve hardened. They weren't just fighting for themselves anymore. They were carrying a truth too many had been forced to swallow in silence. The Atlanta airport lounge faded into a blur of soft lights and distant murmurs as Maya and Lila Carter stepped into a hotel room arranged by the STEM conference organizers, the weight of their day still clinging to them like static. The viral storm of their story, the Carter sisters, now a rallying cry, had followed them, their phones buzzing with notifications from supporters, skeptics, and media outlets hungry for more. They'd spoken their truth through a written statement and a brief interview, but the world's response felt like a tidal wave, threatening to drown their original purpose, to attend a conference and inspire change through science. Maya sank onto the bed, her copy of The Power of Why unopened beside her, while Lila paced near the window, the city's skyline glittering against the night. "We're not just us anymore," Lila said, her voice a mix of awe and frustration. "We're a hashtag, a headline." Maya nodded, her eyes tracing the ceiling. "But we're still here and we need to decide what's next." Their phones lit up with an alert. Horizon Air's CEO, Richard Vance, was holding a live press conference. They opened the stream, watching as Vance stood at a podium, his face taut. "We deeply regret the incident involving Maya and Lila Carter," he said, his voice steady but rehearsed. "Effective immediately, the involved crew members are on unpaid leave, and we're revising our policies with third-party oversight to ensure fairness." Lila's fingers tightened around her phone. "They fired Marcus. Good." Maya's voice was quieter. "It's not enough, it's still about saving face." The conference ended with Vance promising reforms, but the sisters felt the hollowness beneath his words. A new email arrived from the Public Accountability Project, thanking them for their statement and asking if they'd speak at a virtual panel on airline equity. Lila hesitated, but Maya's resolve hardened. "We can't stop now. People are counting on us." They called Sarah Wells again, who coached them on framing their story for the panel, urging them to focus on systemic change over personal pain. "You're not victims," Sarah said. "You're catalysts." The sisters spent the night preparing, their words a blend of clarity and conviction, shaped by hours of debate and reflection. By morning, they joined the virtual panel from their hotel, facing a screen of advocates and passengers sharing similar stories. Maya spoke first, her voice steady. "Our experience wasn't just about one flight. It's about a system that decides who belongs before they even board." Lila added, "We want policies that don't bend to bias for every traveler, not just those with a powerful last name." The panel sparked a flood of responses, with viewers calling their words a wake-up call. Back in the hotel, the sisters faced a flood of interview requests, CNN, NPR, even a late-night show, but they declined most, wary of becoming media props. A local activist group invited them to a community event in Atlanta, and they agreed, feeling it was closer to their roots. At the event, held in a small community center, they shared their story again, this time to a room of families, students, and elders. A young girl, no older than 10, approached afterward, clutching her mother's hand. "I saw you on my mum's phone," she said shyly. "You made me feel like I can stand up too." Lila knelt, her eyes soft. "You can, and you will." The girl's smile was a spark, a reminder of why they'd spoken out. News broke that Horizon Air had released an equity report detailing new diversity training and a drop in bias complaints, small but tangible steps. Maya read it aloud, her tone skeptical. "They're moving because Dad's leverage forced them." Lila nodded, but her eyes held a flicker of hope. "Maybe it's a start." Their father called, his voice thick with pride. "I saw your panel. You didn't just speak, you shifted something. I'm working with regulators now, pushing for a federal bill on passenger fairness." Maya's chest swelled, but she asked, "What if it fades, Dad? What if this is just a moment?" His reply was firm. "You've made it more than that. Keep going." The sisters returned to the airport 2 days later, boarding a new Horizon Air flight to San Francisco. The crew was overly courteous, their smiles polished to a fault, as if trained to avoid another scandal. In seats 1A and 1B, Maya and Lila sat quietly, the leather seats familiar but heavy with memory. A passenger across the aisle, an older woman, glanced at them, then offered a small nod of recognition. No words needed. Lila whispered, "Everyone knows who we are now." Maya's gaze drifted to the clouds outside. They know what happened, not who we are. The flight landed smoothly, and the sisters arrived at the STEM conference, where organizers welcomed them with quiet respect, rescheduling their panel to the closing session. They delivered their speech on innovation, weaving in their recent experience without letting it define them. The audience's applause felt different, earned, not pitying. Backstage, a fellow delegate, a black teen from Chicago, approached. "Your story gave me courage to speak up in my own way," he said. Maya smiled, her heart lifting. "That's why we're here." As they left the conference, the sisters felt a shift, not just in the world around them, but within themselves. They were sharper now, more aware of the edges they'd always navigated but never named. Lila looked at Maya, her voice soft. "Do you think we changed anything real?" Maya paused, then said, "We changed how people see it. That's where it starts." The ride to the airport for their return flight was quiet, the city's lights blurring past. They weren't the same girls who'd arrived in Atlanta, full of untested confidence. They carried a clarity now, a knowing that their fight wasn't just for them, but for every person who'd ever been pushed aside in silence.